If you've been watching the documentary that I've had on here, you realise that it's not like a mainstream documentary because it's looking at facts and evidence. It's not looking at people's emotions or how people felt and that kind of thing. It is a fairly forensic set of documentaries. All right, part two. Anyone who wants to look into some interesting chemtrail research, go to Andrew Johnson's website, which is checktheevidence.com. I'm just going to skip past that part, just so we'll get finished in good time. All right. Now, I'm just going to start with this statement that real problem people don't get their face on mainstream TV. And I'm going to use the example of Osama bin Laden just to explain what I mean by this statement, because I think a lot of people in this room probably know that Osama bin Laden had nothing at all to do with 9/11. There's not a single shred of evidence linking Osama bin Laden to 9/11. But there is evidence that Osama bin Laden had connections to the CIA before 9/11. So the clip I'm going to show you is of Bill Cooper speaking 3 months before 9/11 on his radio show, and he's talking about Osama bin Laden and about how Osama bin Laden was recruited by the CIA. Remember, this clip is 3 months before 9/11.
Can you believe what you have been seeing on CNN today, ladies and gentlemen? Can you believe it? Supposedly, a CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels and generals in their hideout. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. The FBI also, under the leadership of Louis Freeh, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years and years and years and many years, and can't find him. Some doofus, jerk-off reporter with a camera crew waltzes right into his hideout and interviews him. Now, that tells us two things. Either everyone in the intelligence community and all of the intelligence agencies of the United States government are blithering idiots and incompetent fools, including the entire apparatus of the FBI and all of their personnel, or they're lying to us. They're not looking for him at all. And the second is the truth. You see, the CIA created Osama bin Laden. They recruited him. They trained him. They found his leadership. They brought them all together. They showed them how to fight the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, and when that was over, they still continued to fund him and train him, and they're now using him to help bring about world government by making him the big boogeyman, because they can't use Saddam Hussein anymore. If I were the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, within 2 weeks I would have him dead or in custody without fail. Without fail. A reporter from CNN and his little camera crew got in to Osama bin Laden's secret hideout and conducted an interview. If you don't believe me, tune into CNN. They're probably running it right now as I'm speaking. And if you believe it, you are one of the stupidest jerks that ever lived on the face of this earth. And whatever is going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it.
Whatever's going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it. That's 3 months before 9/11. 2 months after 9/11, the guy speaking there was dead. He was shot outside his house. Now, so my statement, real problem people don't get their face on mainstream TV. Osama bin Laden was not a real problem person. He was a creation of the CIA. They wanted him on mainstream TV. Now, you can use the same litmus test for whistleblowers, because people who give away government secrets and speak out are supposedly problem people. And if they're wanted by the government, they're not going to get their faces on TV, because the CIA or whoever wants them is going to capture them and put them in prison before they get on TV. And I would apply that litmus test to these two guys, Ed Snowden and Julian Assange. They've had masses of coverage on mainstream TV. They're not whistleblowers. They want these guys' disclosures to be known about. Now here is a whistleblower who has not been on mainstream TV, Dr Judy Wood, and her book, Where Did the Towers Go?, I would suggest is the most important book yet written this century, because it explains in scientific terms what happened on 9/11. And she has not been allowed on mainstream TV. That tells me she's a genuine whistleblower, and all the evidence in her book tells me that she's a genuine whistleblower. Now, but I'm not going to talk about Dr Judy Wood. I'm going to talk about another whistleblower, someone who has not been extensively covered on mainstream TV. But before I introduce him, I'm just going to talk about secret aircraft. Because if you tell people that the United States are developing aircraft in secret and they've got phenomenal capabilities and they can go really fast, most people will say, well, of course they develop aircraft in secret. That's their job. They do it to protect us. But if you were to say to that person, they've developed triangular craft which are 10 times the size of this room, along each side, 600 feet. They can travel at Mach 9 vertically or horizontally, so they can get into space in 40 seconds from a standing start. They're silent. They can get to the moon in a couple of hours, and they can get to Mars in a few weeks. And they can traverse the solar system. They can land them on the moon or neighbouring planets and use them as bases. And they've weaponized them, and they've got them in orbit in various places. And they've been used to monitor the planet and possibly look down on us and with various different types of weapons, pick out particular countries or people. Now, would you still say the same? That you're not bothered that the US are developing secret craft if they've got that kind of capability? I think we have the right to know about it, because I think that is what is going on. And it comes from the disclosures of someone called Ed Fouche. Now, this is Andrew Johnson, and Andrew Johnson and I recorded a TV show all about the disclosures of Ed Fouche. Now, Ed Fouche came out in 1998. He's an avionics engineer. He worked with various people on secret projects who gave him information about this particular space vehicle. Right? It's 600 feet along each side. It doesn't need wings to fly. It has what's called a magnetic field disruptor, which is powered by a plasma accelerator. And I'm going to come on and I'm going to explain how this plasma accelerator creates a magnetic vortex field around the craft, which somehow disrupts the force of gravity. All right? Because most physicists will agree that at some level electromagnetism and gravity are connected, and that you can affect gravity with electromagnetics. Now, when we've put this interview out, because Andrew's done over 6 hours of interviews with Edgar Fouche, right? They're all on his website if you want to go and watch them, right? After we put that, and it was on national TV, various trolls on the internet started trying to debunk Edgar Fouche. And I had emails from viewers saying, Richard, why are you covering Ed Fouche in the TR3B? He's a liar, he's a proven liar, and he's forged one of his documents. Well, I would point you to this document written by Andrew Johnson entitled The TR3B Trolls and the Truth. Because the two people who have been trying to discredit Ed Fouche, David Hilton and a guy called Jeremy Riss, who goes by the name of Alien Scientist on the internet, Andrew suspects are government agents. And you would need to read this detailed document to understand how they have gone about trying to trash Ed Fouche's claims. Now, either one of two things is true. Either Fouche is a liar and these guys are right, or Fouche is a very important whistleblower and they're trying to trash his work because they want this leak in their secrecy plugged. And I suspect it's the latter. All right? One of them's got a criminal record and links to another disinformation organisation. But this lecture is not about this argument which is going on the internet about Ed Fouche. All right, they filmed him on Skype without his knowledge when he'd had a drink, and they were trying to put words in his mouth and this kind of thing. But I suspect that this has been done as a result of my TV show, because David Hilton actually took an extract from the TV show, and then he showed how Fouche is supposed to have forged a document. But Fouche completely refutes that he's forged any of his documents, and he's got hundreds of documents. So this is Fouche, in the US Air Force for many years, and as I say, worked on lots of different secret projects, and he worked at Area 51, the infamous Area 51. All right, now I'm going to go into some of the details of this secret aerial vehicle, triangular vehicle, and you'll notice there on this particular drawing or this diagram that it was like a kind of a purpley colour. Well, Fouche claims that they have a coating of quasi-crystals which can change their radar absorptiveness, and they can change their colour. So if you were to see one of these things, it would be blending in with the sky. So if you've seen it at night, it's going to be black. All right? If you've seen it during the day, it's going to be the same colour as the sky. And quasi-crystals, which Fouche spoke about in 1998, there's a guy recently just got the Nobel Prize for Physics or Chemistry in quasi-crystals. So he's talking about things before they've been released into the white world. And there are other reasons why I suspect Fouche is a genuine whistleblower, which I'm going to come on to. But before I do that, I'm just going to show you some evidence which backs up Ed Fouche's claims that people who've seen these 600 feet along one side triangular vehicles that are silent, they've been seen all over the place. In 1988, a wave known as the Staffordshire Flap occurred at Cannock Chase. In March 1997, the Sheffield UFO incident took place.
We had 52 flying triangle incidents over Derby.
It took shape. It was a triangle, a big huge triangle with the lights all the way around the edge, and it went over my flat.
What I noticed is it was sort of rotating like that.
I saw this massive, great big black triangle sitting in there.
A huge black triangular object.
I realised it was this black triangular shaped object.
It's the size of it's massive, like a great big football field.
It must have been at least a football field in size.
Almost the size of a football pitch.
So the size of 3 football pitches.
Just added off.
Right.
But there were no sound at all.
I could see then it was a triangle.
It was absolutely massive. And in the centre was a small cluster of red and orange, like honeycomb arrangement of lights.
And there was one red one in the centre.
One light at each corner and the big light in the middle.
Pretty much dead on what I saw, to be honest.
And it was at this point that the triangle tilted up in the air, but it rose, like I say, like a submarine underwater. It travelled fast and, most strangely, was completely silent. Overall dimensions approximately the size of a football pitch.
And it actually came down in the road and hovered about 10 foot, stood there staring at it.
Now these statements are all from a film I made last year called Almost Identified Flying Objects. And also in that film I reported on the Belgian UFO flap of 1990. And in the film we've screened some video of Professor Emil Schweitzer, because the Belgian Air Force actually chased some of these triangles that were appearing in the skies over Belgium, and they captured them on radar. So the radar data was given to Belgium's top radar expert. He examined the data. He said, yes, they're definitely real objects, and we can't understand how they're performing these particular manoeuvres. And it was a bit of a scoop to get this particular footage of Professor Emil Schweitzer from David Caton, who got it from researcher Harry Harris.
Another wave of black triangles appeared in Belgium in 1990. The Belgian Air Force scrambled F-16 fighters to try and intercept them, but were outmanoeuvred every time. After days of activity, the Belgian Air Force had no explanation, and to this day still have no explanation as to the origin of the triangular UFOs. After the events, an investigation was launched, and the airborne radar tips from the F-16s were given to radar expert Professor Emil Schweitzer. Schweitzer ruled out any form of radar anomaly and concluded the radar systems were tracking real objects. Calculations were carried out on the data, and in one manoeuvre the triangular craft turned a sharp corner, resulting in an acceleration of 30 g. That's 30 times greater than the Earth's gravity. This would be impossible for a conventional aircraft, and any occupants would be dead. Incredibly, in 1991, Schweitzer was asked by the British Ministry of Defence to come over to the UK to give British military chiefs a briefing on the movements of this unknown craft and explain the radar data. We know this because Schweitzer himself told researcher Harry Harris when Harris managed to get an interview with him in his hotel whilst in the UK.
What I found by calculations starting from the data recorded by the pilot, that the UFO made at one point of his trajectory a very strange motion. And during that very strange motion, the normal acceleration was, let's say, above 30 Gs. Yes. So the trajectory was, first of all, the UFO was flying almost level, and then suddenly made a 90-degree motion. At that point, where he made a 90-degree turn, that point, the normal acceleration was above 30 Gs. Climbed almost vertically, and then descended obliquely to the ground. During the oblique descent, the UFO was flying supersonic.
Is it reasonable to assume that there couldn't have been anything living in that machine, that UFO, as we understand life?
I would say that with the present human technology, that's impossible.
The MOD have never publicly admitted they requested a meeting with Schweitzer.
So he said, with present human technology, that would be impossible. I would change that. With present disclosed human technology, that would be impossible. Because I suspect that what we were seeing in the 1990 Belgian UFO flap was some version or other of the TR-3B. That's not to say that UFOs don't exist, because I think they do. And I'm going to come on to that. Now, okay, so let's have a look at Ed Fouche talking now. In this next clip, he talks about two space stations which have been put in orbit above the Earth that the N.S.A. have not told anyone about. They haven't told the American government about them. And he also speaks about two different methods that the N.S.A. had in the 1990s to go to and from these two particular satellites. One method was using the TR-3B, which I'm going to come on to. The other method was to use two conventional aircrafts, one on top of the other, the SR-75 and the SR-74. SR-74 would go on top of the SR-75, it would take off from a normal runway, it would go to a very high altitude and then would release the SR-74. The SR-74 could then actually get into space and go to these two space stations that they've not told anyone about. All right? But the SR-74 was not able to take off from the ground, so they needed the two conventional type aircraft with wings and jet engines to get this thing in orbit. So they don't need a space shuttle in order to get into orbit. And the TR-3B was the other vehicle that they were using to get into space.
Now, the NASA space shuttle, I'm here to tell you, is really an antique by comparison. The joke is on us. If you think these rumors are far-fetched, look at the YB-49 and the XB-70, flown in 1948 and 1964, respectively. Now look at the SR-75, which has been spotted numerous times. You say the government can't keep a secret? Boy, you're wrong. From my sources, two new vehicles have been placed in permanent orbit. One of these vehicles is the Space Orbital Nuclear Service Intercept Vehicle, SUN-SIV. When you hear it from another reliable source in 10 years, you'll remember this. It's codenamed Locust. The SR-74 and the TR-3B flying triangle can deliver spares, replacement units, service fuels, chemicals, and modules to the SUN-SIV, or Locust. The robotic SUN-SIV uses deliverables to service, calibrate, repair, and replace parts on the newer N.S.A., CIA, and NRO Ferret satellites. And I know for a fact that they were developing a robotic repair of electronics equipment as far back as '81, because I worked a program to where they didn't want technicians looking at the equipment.
So this is in 1998, he's saying all this, and he's not really being given a platform to air these particular disclosures. Right, now I mentioned before that the craft uses what's called a plasma accelerator. And this is what I think it would look like if we were to look inside it. So we're looking at it, let's say we'll go over the prototype one, which was 200 feet along each side. You're looking at a 100 feet diameter tube, which is about 10 feet across. So you could probably walk around this structure inside there when it's powered down. In there they fill it with a mercury-based plasma, which is a gas which has become ionized. Pressurize it to 150,000 atmospheres, which is extremely high pressure, or in the operational models 250,000 atmospheres, and it's then spun around in a circle at 40,000 revolutions per minute, so 40,000 RPM. Right? So what you've got in a plasma, you've got charged particles, and you've got them going around very, very, very fast in a circle. Now, a charged particle which moves creates a magnetic field. If you have charge flowing in that direction, you get a magnetic field at 90 degrees to it in that direction. So what you're going to get a magnetic field enveloping the whole craft of some phenomenal strength, which I'm going to come on to. Ed describes it as a magnetic vortex field. Now, the thing that enabled them to develop these plasma accelerators, allegedly, is the material that the device was made from, the thing that's withstanding this massive pressure. And he describes it as a foil-like material as thin as a plastic bag, which you can't cut with a knife. And they used 12 layers of it in this plasma accelerator. And this is what he talks about in this next clip.
Another friend who worked for General Dynamics in Fort Worth described a program in which he worked a plasma accelerator in the mid-60s, researching gravity warping techniques. He is a physicist by education and trade. This was his first top-secret program. He described a foil-like material, much like that discovered after Roswell crash. He described the foil as 12 layers of material less than 10,000ths of an inch thick. It was as flexible as a plastic trash bag, but virtually indestructible to piercing, burning, or cutting, which you've probably all heard before. Here's what you haven't heard. In order to cut the material used for the project, the material was supercooled, a large electrical charge was applied to polarize the molecular structure, and a laser cutter was applied in order to cut this material. Large ribbons of this material were used to reinforce the accelerator, which contained the mercury-based plasma that they started researching in 1965. The plasma was cooled to superconductive temperatures, rotated at 45,000 revolutions per minute, and pressurized at 150,000 atmospheres. This would be considered state-of-the-art technology even today.
All right. Now, in the next clip, he describes some of the characteristics of the craft, because they've made this plasma accelerator, they've got it to actually reduce its own weight. This magnetic vortex field is affecting the gravitational field around it, and is also presumably reducing inertial forces if the thing changes direction. So it's reducing its own mass. This is physics which is not in the white world. Anyway, he describes the characteristics in this next clip.
It was 200 feet across, the prototype. The Tactical Reconnaissance TR-3B first flight was in the early 90s. The triangular-shaped, nuclear-powered aerospace platform was developed under the top-secret Aurora program. By 1994, there were $3 billion-plus operational models. The operational model is 600 feet across. This flying triangle is not fiction. If you don't believe me, ask the tens of thousands of people who have now spotted one version or another of it, from Belgium to England. Ken can tell you about people that have seen it in England to Arizona. The TR-3B vehicle's outer coating is reactive to electrical radar stimulation and can change reflectiveness, radar absorptiveness, and color. The circular plasma field accelerator ring, called the magnetic field disruptor, surrounds a rotatable crew compartment. It's far ahead of anything you've ever imagined as far as technology. Sandia and Livermore Laboratories developed a reverse engineered MFD, and I believe the government will go at any lengths to protect this technology. The plasma in this accelerator is mercury-based. It's pressurized at 250,000 atmospheres at a temperature of 150 degrees Kelvin, superconductivity, and accelerated to 60,000 revolutions per minute to create a superconductive plasma with the resulting gravity energy. The MFD generates a magnetic vortex field which disrupts and neutralizes the effects of gravity on mass within proximity by 89%. This causes the effect of making the aircraft extremely light and able to outperform any aircraft yet constructed. TR-3B is a high-altitude stealth reconnaissance platform with indefinite loiter time. Once you get it up there at speed, it doesn't take much propulsion to maintain altitude. With the vehicle's mass reduced by 89%, the vehicle can travel at Mach 9 vertically or horizontally. So for those that have had sightings of things making right, and they're not perfect right turns, obviously. Nothing can make a perfect right turn. It's against the laws of physics. But it sure looks like a right turn at a distance.
So what he's saying is that the field generated by this plasma accelerator reduces the weight of the whole thing by 89%. So let's say you weigh 10 stone. If you stood in the middle, you weigh 1 stone. All right? And the whole craft's weight is reduced. Now, let's ask the question, does this seem plausible? Is there anything in our physics textbooks that we can verify this with and say, well, is he telling us the truth? Well, here's a science paper from 2010 entitled Generating a Magnetic Field by a Rotating Plasma, 12 years after Fouche's initial disclosures. So, yes, it is possible to generate a magnetic field by rotating a plasma. But is it possible to use a magnetic field for propulsion? The Lorentz force is the magnetic force in physics. So in electric motors, you have two components which you pass electricity through. Each produces a magnetic field, and it's the force between those fields that turns your electric motor, your lawnmower, your washing machine, what have you. But can you use that force to make something float off the ground? It's not that easy because the Lorentz force requires two components, one which pushes the other apart. So if you try to use it for propulsion, the component which is being pushed upwards will leave the thing that's pushing it. So it's a bit like trying to lift yourself up off a chair and float in midair. You can't do it. But according to Fouche, if you get the magnetic field strong enough and in this configuration of a magnetic vortex field, I would imagine it's something the shape of, because every magnetic field has a shape, it has topology, right? So the shape would be something like water going down a plug hole. And I suspect it requires a field which is of immense strength before it starts to affect gravity. And I'm going to come on to that now. Let's just ask the question, if we were able to rotate a plasma at 40,000 RPM, as Ed Fouche claims, what would the strength of the magnetic field? Now we can ask that question by comparing it to electricity in a wire. When you pass electricity down a wire, you get a magnetic field at 90 degrees to it, going around that wire. The further away from the wire, the weaker the field. All right? Now you can put your wire in a circle and allow your electrons to flow around in a circle, very similar to the TR-3B. So you've got charged particles going around in a circle, just like the plasma accelerator. And it produces a magnetic field this shape, all the way around the ring. So it's something like that that the TR-3 is going to be generating. So B here is the magnetic field strength measured in Tesla. The equation for magnetic field strength for a charged particle flowing in a direction is given by this equation here. Mu naught over 4 pi times QV over R squared. Don't get frightened by that. It's not as complicated as you might think. Mu naught over 4 pi is a constant. Okay, so we can pretty much forget about that term. R is the distance from the charged particle to where you're measuring the field, right? So all this term means is the further away you get, the smaller the field. So we can forget that term. The two important terms is V, that's the velocity of your charge, the speed of your electrons, and Q, the number of electrons, how much charge is there. So in a copper wire with DC current flowing down it, electrons flow at 0.735 millimeters per second. Electrons will flow at 0.7 of a millimeter in 1 second. That's how fast electrons go down the wire, right? Now let's compare that speed, V, with a plasma in Fouche's accelerator. He said it was 100 feet in diameter, and he said it was going around at 40,000 RPM. That comes out at a speed of 64,000 meters per second, compared to 0.000735 meters per second. So the plasma, or the charged particles in the plasma accelerator, are travelling 87 million times faster than the electrons in a copper wire. So if the other factors in this equation were the same, it means that B, the magnetic field strength, is going to be 87 million times that of the field produced by a wire. Now let's look at the other term. So do we have the same amount of charge in a plasma though? Well, the charge in copper, or the electron density, is 8.4 times 10 to the 22 electrons in every cubic centimetre of copper. How does that compare with a plasma? Well, the electron density in a plasma depends on the type of plasma, and it depends on the temperature. But looking at this graph, if we just look at the electron density of 10 to the 22 here, right, we see that metals, or metal plasmas, exist at about, in other words, supercooled. Fouche said that the plasma accelerator was cooled to 150 degrees Kelvin. That's about minus 120 odd centigrade. So this is all making sense to me. The electron density of metals, because this was a metal-based plasma, it's a mercury-based plasma, supercooled, would produce a similar electron density to that of copper. So that's why they've probably got to supercool it, so that the plasma can obtain that particular electron density. So from those figures, I would suggest that the magnetic field strength using this plasma would be thousands of times higher than using wire and copper. Sorry, using wire and electricity. Now, this table here shows typical magnetic field strengths, fixed magnetic field strengths, because you can't have pulsed magnetic fields, but I think we're talking about fixed magnetic fields. If you've got something going around in a circle at a fixed speed, the field is going to be fixed. It's not going to be pulsed. So a typical magnetic field in a power transformer is between 1 and 2 Tesla. Tesla is the unit of magnetic field strength. I particularly like this one. Where is it? Strength. Yeah, 16 Tesla is the magnetic field strength used to levitate a frog. Right, but the strongest magnetic field ever produced in a laboratory, this is a fixed magnetic field, not a pulsed one, ever produced in a laboratory is 45 Tesla, and that's it. So I think they're producing fields with the TR3B of thousands of Tesla. So there's no physicist can stand here and say to me, well, if you get a magnetic vortex field of, say, 10,000 Tesla, it will not affect gravity. They can't say that, because they've never produced one in a laboratory. And the reason why they've never produced one in a laboratory is because they haven't got the materials that they used in that TR3B plasma accelerator. So has Ed Fouche taken all of this into account when he's made up his story? I don't think so. Now, they have produced pulsed magnetic fields in the order of thousands of Tesla, a few thousand Tesla, but they've blown the laboratory up. Because with a pulsed magnetic field, you get voltages induced, and they just blow everything up. But a fixed magnetic field, I think, is what we're talking about. So this is all adding up to me. And just to reiterate, no scientist can say to you that if you had a fixed magnetic vortex field of, let's say, 10,000 Tesla, that it wouldn't suddenly interrupt gravity, because they've never done it in a lab. Okay? Now, Ed said that these craft were capable of Mach 9, that's 6,900 miles per hour, not just horizontally but vertically. At that speed, from a standing start, you'd be in space in 40 seconds. A 600 feet triangle in space, in orbit in 40 seconds. And we were all shown the space shuttle on TV. 10, 9, 8, 7. It is a big, big con. Now, if we imagine that they've increased this capability, because we're talking about 1990 here, these capabilities. Let's say they've increased the capability by tenfold. you're talking 70,000 miles per hour, right? That would take you under 4 hours to get to the moon, and it would take you just 3 weeks to get to Mars. Now, if you've got a 600 feet platform that you can get to the moon in a few hours, you can put it on the surface of the moon, use it as a base, take it to Mars, take it to any planet in the solar system, do you think that they're not going to do that? Or do you think they're just going to put it in a cupboard and let it gather dust? I think they've been there and they've got the T-shirt. One person who made claims about this in 1998 was a guy called William Hamilton.
This colonel is a real warrior type guy, and he had a degree in plasma physics. And he was also a consultant to NASA, and he was a consultant to people out at the Palos Verdes nuclear power generating station just 50 miles west of Phoenix. The other thing he said was there was a base on the moon. I find that quite astounding. I mean, I have heard astounding things, not only from this colonel, okay, but also probably the highest rank was a retired 3-star general, lieutenant general in the Air Force. And he knew another guy that I was in contact with, and this other guy claims that he worked 7 years on the U.S. anti-gravity program. I have a fraction of what he told me, and I've got it tape recorded. It's true. Whoa. What a sham the space program is. Because there's another space program going on. A secret space program. And that's what I was attempting to find. In fact, you don't have to go too far to find that there is some secret space programs going on, because they had their own shuttles and their own astronaut crews right out here at Vandenberg Air Force Base, unbeknownst to everybody, and they scuttled a $5 billion facility that was housed there at one time. That was back in the 80s. But the kind of space program he was talking about is using a spacecraft that can leave the bounds of our atmosphere and travel to the planet Mars at 0.8 C, 0.8 the speed of light. And I said, how do you know that? I've been there, he said.
All right, now we might ask the question, well, what the hell is NASA all about if this stuff is going on? What are NASA doing? Well, I'm going to show you a clip of Barack Obama speaking at the Kennedy Space Center in 2010. And Obama is laying out NASA's program of work for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I just want you to consider technology for a moment, your communications technology, your mobile phone, and compare it to the 1960s and 1950s and how much it has advanced. It's incredible, isn't it, what we have now in communications technology. But compare that to propulsion. We had rockets that we could control and get into space in the 1940s. NASA is still using rockets now. It seems that there's been no advancement in their technology with regards to propulsion. And I think it's because NASA is a cover organization which is just presenting technology to keep the public passive as to space and to not question about what's going on that the N.S.A. and the Air Force are developing, because they're running the real space program, not NASA. And what I've done with this clip of Barack Obama is I've put on the screen here what I think is really going on. So listen to Obama's words. You might need to stand up at the back to see them, but if you read the bottom of the screen, this is what I think the real picture is, and Obama is just part of one massive cover-up.
We're no longer racing against an adversary. We're no longer competing to achieve a singular goal like reaching the moon. In fact, what was once a global competition has long since become a global collaboration. By doing that, we will ramp up robotic exploration of the solar system, including a probe of the sun's atmosphere, new scouting missions to Mars and other destinations, and an advanced telescope to follow Hubble, allowing us to peer deeper into the universe than ever before. We will increase Earth-based observation to improve our understanding of our climate and our world. And we will extend the life of the International Space Station, likely by more than 5 years, while actually using it for its intended purpose. And in order to reach the space station, we will work with a growing array of private companies competing to make getting to space easier and more affordable. We will build on the good work already done on the Orion crew capsule. I've directed Charlie Bolden to immediately begin developing a rescue vehicle using this technology, and this Orion effort will be part of the technological foundation for advanced spacecraft to be used in future deep space missions. In fact, Orion will be readied for flight right here in this room. We will invest more than $3 billion to conduct research on an advanced heavy lift rocket, a vehicle to efficiently send into orbit the crew capsules, propulsion systems, and large quantities of supplies needed to reach deep space. In developing this new vehicle, we will not only look at revising or modifying older models, we want to look at new designs, new materials, new technologies that will transform not just where we can go, but what we can do when we get there. And we will finalize a rocket design no later than 2015 and then begin to build it. And by 2025, we expect new spacecraft designed for long journeys to allow us to begin the first ever crewed missions beyond the moon into deep space. We'll start by sending astronauts to an asteroid for the first time in history. By the mid-2030s, I believe we can send humans to orbit Mars and return them safely to Earth. And a landing on Mars will follow, and I expect to be around to see it. Critical to deep space exploration will be the development of breakthrough propulsion systems and other advanced technologies. So I'm challenging NASA to break through these barriers. And we'll give you the resources to break through these barriers. And I know you will, with ingenuity and intensity, because that's what you've always done.
Yeah. He's just a slightly more sophisticated version of Ed Miliband. Being used to cover things up. All right, now I mentioned UFOs before, and if you listen to what Ed Fouche said, he said that the plasma accelerator was back-engineered. Right? What he means is that they recovered a downed flying saucer, they took it apart, and they found a plasma accelerator in there. So they started to build one themselves. They didn't quite know what was going to happen when they built it. They actually chained it down because they were expecting it to take off. Okay? But they couldn't get it to take off. They could only get it to reduce its weight by 89%. And that's why the triangle, that's why they made it into the shape of a triangle and put conventional type thrusters in each corner. What they were trying to do was make a flying saucer when they were developing the TR-3B originally. All right? And for those who have not researched the UFO subject, it might come as a surprise to you that UFOs are real. The evidence is voluminous for those who haven't looked into it. And not only that, there is a dark side to the UFO subject, which is probably one of the reasons why the subject is covered up, and that is to do with mutilations. As I say, it goes into a whole other area which many people don't really want to know about. And you may have seen my film UFOs and NATO, the Human Mutilation Cover-Up, where I present the disclosures of an ex-military guy who was involved in a special forces unit run by NATO. This particular organisation has, he claimed, 8 weapons situated in the US, Germany and the UK that use some kind of non-ballistic weapon system, so either an energy weapon or based on a laser, some kind of electromagnetic thing that they can point at a UFO and it will then interfere with its propulsion system. Now if you think that they've actually developed their own propulsion systems, they're going to know how to disable them, and they are electromagnetic or gravitational in nature, right? So a non-ballistic type metal, a weapon, would bring them to the ground. And this is allegedly what they've been firing at UFOs. So what they do is, and the military source did not know how they know when and where UFOs are going to appear, but they have intelligence as to when and where they're going to appear. They'll send that team out to a particular part of the world, they'll be on standby in a helicopter, and then they'll fire this weapon. and there have been crash retrievals in the 1990s, and there's been retrievals on the Brecon Beacons not far from here. This is a reconstruction of two bodies that were discovered on the Brecon Beacons, a 21-year-old man and a 16-year-old girl, who I believe in, well, I can't 100% say I've got the date, right, but I think this newspaper article is talking about this. And I just want to put out an appeal, because I'm in this part of the world. This is in 1990, the 20th of August. I'm just going to read this report. Police used their new helicopter. This is from the Brecon and Radnor Express, and that's the date, 20th of August 1990. Police used their new helicopter and dogs in their search for a London man missing at Lambetta, Crickhowell on Monday. The man, who has not been named by the police, hired a car in London to visit friends in the Crickhowell and Swansea areas. The car was found with its lights illuminated and its engine running. There was no sign of the man. The man was later found in London in a confused state. Now, I don't buy all of that story, especially the man being found in London in a confused state, because I've spoken to a farmer from Lambetta who knew about this incident, and he said to me that there wasn't one person in the car, there was two. And he also said that they definitely did not find anyone in connection with it. So there's a vehicle there, lights on, engine running, and then at some point later the military have recovered two bodies from Brecon Beacon with all the hair removed, all the blood removed. The female had her breasts surgically removed, they both had their genitals removed. Ghastly stuff, but that was covered up. Those bodies were taken to MOD St Athens, and then who knows where after then. So I'm trying to find evidence that there is two people that have gone missing. They might not be Welsh, they might be English, because it was the holiday season. And I have found evidence of something very suspicious which happened to MOD St Athens just 2 weeks after this event. A woman was found in a car with her two children, 3 of them dead, after this, 2 weeks after. And she lived on the military houses at that estate. And I'm also trying to find her husband, because I believe he was probably an RAF serviceman. So, evidence such as in my film UFOs and NATO, or the real story of the TR-3B, or other things about UFOs, why don't we hear about it in the mainstream media? Well, I have been approached by mainstream media more than once to take part in their documentaries. And I received an email in May this year from Plum Pictures. Now, Plum Pictures are currently in the process of producing a new documentary about the UFO phenomenon for Channel 4. Or in particular, it's about the ET cover-up. That's what they've described it as. So this email says, Plum Pictures are in the process of making a film about the ET cover-up, and I wanted to talk in more detail with you about your possible involvement. So this is Channel 4 wanting me to be one of the talking heads in their UFO documentary. But I have not agreed to take part. And this clip that I'm going to show you was a telephone call of me talking to the production company, and you'll understand from this phone call why we never get any truth on our television.
Hello, Joanna speaking.
Hello, Joanna. My name's Richard Hall. I got an email from you asking if I was interested in taking part in a film that you're making.
Oh, hi, Richard. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Oh, thanks for giving me a call. I was just about to kind of try and hunt you down, because that number on your site isn't...
Yeah, that doesn't work anymore.
Doesn't go through anymore. So, shall I tell you a little bit about what we're doing?
Yeah, sure.
We are making a documentary for Channel 4 about the ET cover-up / conspiracy, and it's a presenter-led film. We've got a guy called Dan Schreiber who is kind of taking us on this journey, and he is one of the head writers on QI, and he produces Museum of Curiosity on Radio 4, so he's kind of he's not an expert in the field by any means, but he's really interested in it, in this whole topic. So we've been going around the country speaking to various different people and getting their views and theories on what's going on with regards to aliens and extraterrestrials, and how, if there is, how it's being covered up by the government or other parties involved. And I just wanted to, a few people have mentioned your name. I know you run quite a big website, not just with regards to ETs, but with the whole kind of truth movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to kind of get your take on the whole thing and see if you would be interested in talking to us.
Okay, well, can I ask a few questions?
Sure.
So you mentioned E.T. cover-up.
Yeah.
So that expresses two things to me. It's saying whoever's making the film must believe that extraterrestrials exist and that they're being covered up. Do you believe those two things?
I personally am open-minded. I'm not really. I don't really know either way, but obviously this film has been a learning curve for us.
Okay, so if you're passionate enough to make a Channel 4 program and get it commissioned, how can you possibly not believe in what you're actually producing?
Well, it's an exploration of the different theories out there. It's not saying this is definitely happening or this is definitely happening. It's looking at going to speak to the different people.
All right, okay, so it's more about looking at the people rather than trying to find the truth on their evidence.
No, it's examining the theories.
Okay. Now,
Dan gets really excited about all the different theories.
Right. Okay.
We're not making a decision about whether they're true or not. We're just kind of examining the different layers of the theories.
Okay. Now you mentioned in your email ET cover-up.
That's
what
our
will
top line.
What will the title of the program be?
Something along those lines. That is our working title.
No. Well, what is the title that will appear on Channel 4?
Oh, I have no idea. That's something that Channel 4 will decide. The edit.
The reason why I asked that is because the last one was called Confessions of an Alien Abductee, and no one was told what it was going to be called. So it's debunking the subject just in the title before they've even got into the documentary.
Okay, so you can't even give me that. Okay, all right.
The working title, as I said, and it will be on the contributor release form, is Dan Schreiber Project: The Big ET Cover-Up, and our top line is Cover-Up Conspiracy. That's our angle.
And so do you know when it will air?
No, I don't. It will be later on this year.
Okay.
But everything we have to give Channel 4 everything in kind of a few weeks' time. So it will be later this year, but I can't say when.
Right. Now you mentioned my website, and as you said, there's a lot of information on there. And I've produced 49 TV shows which cover the UFO subject.
Yeah.
And I've made 7 feature-length films.
Yeah.
And they're all evidence-based. Okay. Now I see that you've been to film Miles Johnson at the Basis Conference. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Miles Johnson is not a serious researcher. He promotes fantasists and people who are delusional. I don't know why he does that. I have a theory on that, but there's no way I would be associated with any documentary that features the likes of Miles Johnson, because you might as well go to a circus if you're going to put people like him on. So there's no way I would agree to be in the same TV show as Miles Johnson. Now the other thing would be, I would only agree to take part if you gave me editorial control of the program. Would you be prepared to do that?
No, absolutely. I can't. It's just not within my right to do that.
Would you be able to request that from because obviously you did say that I have you did.
What do you mean exactly?
Well, I would like to view the program that you intend to air before it airs.
Yeah.
So that I could have a final say in whether it airs or not. So that if there's any.
That's just not something that broadcasters do. It just isn't done. You can't give contributors the right to say, actually, change this, change that.
I understand that's how the way you work, but I also believe that is that's why we never get any truth on television. Because your industry works in that way. I don't work that way when I produce television programs. I let people see what I'm going to air, and if they're not happy with it, I will change it.
I can show you things as we're going along, perhaps, but I could never give you editorial control.
Your industry has a history of trapping people into making these kind of documentaries and then ridiculing them on screen. That's why. No, that is. I can give you a list of people who will make that claim.
Who will what? Sorry.
Who will make that claim that they were trapped into making a documentary?
Oh, I'm not claiming that I'm being trapped into making any sort of documentary. I just wanted to kind of,
well,
I want you to know that the documentary that we're making doesn't have an agenda, and it's not setting out to ridicule anyone, and we have quite a strict duty of care.
Okay, well,
that we don't want to ridicule people and make fun of
yeah.
people.
So, right, there will be a single-page program proposal for this documentary then, yes?
Well, not really, no.
Well, no, the industry works on program proposals, so there must be.
Well, there are treatments written and submitted to Channel 4, yes, in the development stages. But
Right.
again,
Would you be able to email me all of those treatments that have been emailed to Channel 4 so I can have a look at them to see what it is that you're trying to make in this program?
Sure, I can email you some information about the program, absolutely. But it's going to be exactly what I just told you. We're exploring the ET phenomenon, specifically the cover-up and conspiracy surrounding the subject. We're making a non-judgmental documentary about the different theories that are out there, and we don't have any specific agenda. We're just
right. Well, if you're going to screen Miles Johnston in the Basis Conference, you're not making a non-judgmental program. I mean, you might as well go to the circus if you're going to screen that. That is not a non-judgmental documentary on the ET cover-up. Because that conference is not about the ET cover-up.
No.
It's a rodeo show.
That was more research than anything else, if I'm being honest with you. And obviously, I can't say what's going to end up in the final edit or not. But
okay. Well, if you're not prepared to give me any editorial control, then
I'm afraid I can't do that.
Right. Okay. Well, there's no way that I would. That's the only condition.
I can't give you editorial control of a program that we're making for Channel 4. It just doesn't work like that.
Well, I know it doesn't work like that, and that's what's wrong with the television industry.
Okay. Well, I don't think we're going to get anywhere in that case. I mean, it's totally up to you. I don't want to coerce you into doing anything. I just thought it would be interesting to speak to you.
Okay.
I know that you have some kind of on current great theories, and you're good at talking.
They're not. It's not theories. I present evidence.
Yeah. Well.
And can I advise that you watch, but please do not take any content from the UFOs and NATO, the human mutilation cover-up, because there are people who are being mutilated and left in remote places in connection with UFOs, and the military have tried to fire particular weapons at UFOs.
Yeah, and it was
right. This is an extremely serious subject which you should not be ridiculing, which it sounds like you are to me. Well, if you want to treat it seriously, then you should be giving the likes of me editorial control.
That's it. I mean, you can't say that.
Yes, well, I just have said it.
You can't say that that I'm ridiculing the subject.
Well, okay. Well, I tell you what. Well, let me judge that when you produce what you produce, because every other program that's appeared on Channel 4 of this nature has been a ridicule attempt.
Okay, I mean, we're trying to tread a different path here, but there's only...
Well, I don't believe you.
I can only try and reassure you. I can only... This is all I'm doing all I can. When all I'm saying is I'd like you to be involved, but there's just no way that I can give you editorial control.
Right, well, there's no way I can take part then. Okay.
Okay, that's
all right.
Fine.
Thank you. Cheers now. Bye-bye.
All right, so get some beers in for that one later this year. God knows what it's going to be like. Now, you might think I've been a little bit harsh on Miles Johnson with those comments. But I'm just going to give you some information. The last documentary that they made, as I said, was called Confessions of an Alien Abductee. And about 18 months before Channel 4 made that documentary, there was an organisation set up called AMASH. Anyone heard of it? Anomalous Mind Management Abductee Contactee Helpline. And that was set up by Miles Johnson and a few other people. And their role was to interview people who claim to have had abduction-type experiences, film them on camera, and have meetings and all the rest of it. So they built up a database of people who make these kind of claims. And Miles, was the person who collaborated with Channel 4 to get their subjects into that Channel 4 documentary, where those people were made to look foolish on screen. And I know that one woman was extremely annoyed at that. All right? So he was instrumental in that previous debunking attempt. Now, they actually contacted me, that same production company that were making that program, and they wanted to use the David Cameron clip. Anyone seen the clip where I challenged David Cameron on UFOs? They wanted to put that in Confessions of an Alien Abductee. And I said, well, I want you to show David Cameron's apology. I want you to read out the letter that David Cameron wrote to me personally. I want you to show the whole thing in its context, so it's not being used as a ridicule attempt, and they didn't show it. Right? Not that I wanted them to. I just give them all my conditions as to them showing that, and they didn't. And then I got wind that Miles was collaborating with Mainstream on this, and I discussed it with Miles. I've got all the emails. I said to him, Miles, why are you getting involved with Channel 4? This is going to be an absolute debunking attempt of the abduction phenomenon. Oh, Richard, you have to give them a chance. We have to give them a chance. I said, no way, Miles. You know what's going on here. So I disagreed with his decision to collaborate with Channel 4 before the last documentary was made. Now, Miles Johnson is no longer operating under the name of MASH. He's operating under his old name, which is Bases. And I would suggest the reason why he's doing that is because the name of a MASH was trashed in that documentary by Channel 4. But he's now operating under a new name, and he held a little conference recently where he's allowed Plum Pictures into that conference to film every nutter that he's had on that stage and take whatever content that they want from to make another documentary. So he's doing exactly the same again, right? So I don't think I'm being harsh on Miles Johnson with my comments in that. I suspect a MASH was set up specifically for that Channel 4 documentary. There's a honeypot for people who make such claims so they can pick out the ones they're going to debunk and put them on TV. So who is Miles Johnson? He's trying to persuade me to take part in hit pieces like this. Just like Ed Miliband, right? We should not be negotiating with Ed Miliband because he is not the leader. Just as these people are not the leaders. They're flunkies. Because it will be the intelligence agencies who are behind the making of such documentaries to try and get people to think there's nothing to the UFO phenomenon, when there is, right? These are professional piss takers, and he wants me to go grovelling to them, right? We should not be collaborating with these people. We should be exposing them. Thank you.